Hello, welcome back to the next installment of our little mini series for the Speak 28 by 28 challenge. And today I am going to show you inside, we're going to give a little example prompt and I'm going to show you how this works for any level. In a minute, I'm going to pass over to a little screen share video and you'll be able to watch and catch up and see how it all goes. But before we get started, if you're ready, if you're like, yes, I've been meaning to join, thank you for the reminder, then you can do so now at lindsaydoeslanguages.com/speak. If you want to see how you can use the prompts every day at different levels, stay tuned. All right, then. We have a really simple prompt example. This isn't one from the challenge. This is just one that came to mind as I was thinking of how I can show how we can do this at different levels. And I'm going to walk you through this for beginners, intermediate, and advanced. I'm going to do this in English. So we're going to first of all do beginner. So the prompt example we're going for here is my favorite food, right? So the way to think of this is with any speaking prompt, any writing prompt, you can go in endless directions. You could be going into a very functional style of writing where you could be thinking, okay, this is a functional piece of writing, my favorite food. I'm going to talk about what I like, why I like it, what I don't like, why I don't like it. It has a function to communicate those thoughts to someone, right? It could be functional in the sense of a more realistic scenario. Maybe you think, okay, when am I going to actually talk about my favorite foods? Maybe it's when you are in a restaurant and there's a waiter in front of you and you want to describe what you want to eat, right? Then you can get creative. So there's functional writing, functional speaking practice, and creative writing and creative speaking practice. So this may be where you're doing something that is more kind of poetic, a little bit less grounded in reality in some way. So it could still be a functional piece of writing in the sense that perhaps it's a letter or an email, but it's fake, it's made up. The creative is coming from the fact that it's made up, right? So they're the two things to think about as a sort of start point of which direction you want to take things. And then, of course, within that, you've got all sorts of options. So when it comes to creative writing, it may be that you go down the poetry angle. And then within poetry, what type of poem do you do? Do you go haiku, diamante? Do you go for like some kind of limerick or a different rhyme structure or like a totally abstract poem that doesn't rhyme at all? Like, there's all these different ways that you can take it within that sort of genre of writing style or speaking style itself. So endless options. And sometimes that can feel a little bit like a lot, right? And the nice thing about that is that then means it's easy to make this work for any level. So if we take this as our example, as a beginner, I might be thinking, if I think of languages I know at a beginner level, I do tend to know those basics of like, I don't like, because, right? So I would be then doing something like that. We're going to make this so simple. So kind of boring example, but you'll get the point of the different levels. I like pizza because it is tasty. I don't like, I don't know, apples because they are too crunchy. Maybe they're because they're crunchy is where you're at. Maybe you're learning the word for two and so you want to put that in there. Whatever way around it is. But as a beginner, we could be doing something kind of along this level. And then obviously we're talking about speaking prompts. I'm giving you a written example so we can see. Intermediate, we're then beginning to think about perhaps what have you done recently? What have you learned recently? What grammar points have you been studying in your textbook lately? What has come up in lessons that you've had recently with tutors or exchanges or anything like that? What's come up that you learned like for the first time or that you didn't know and then you learned, right? So we can then add that in. So maybe at an intermediate stage, recently, you learnt how to get really descriptive with some adjectives and adverbs. So we might say something, if we take we're going to take this very, very same example and we're going to like zhuzh it up. Okay. So like piece by piece. And again, this is not the way that you have to take this. Like it may be that you have a whole different angle that you go down. You're not starting with I like, I don't like, because, right? But if you're an intermediate, you might then have something like I really like pizza with pineapple because it is so tasty that I almost die, right? Extreme, but you get the point, right? And also, this is actually a good example because, oh, it's so tasty, I almost die, is like very, maybe a bit slangy in the sense of, is that going to translate the same way? So it's giving you something to then be kind of looking up and checking for yourself at that level. Then we say, I really don't like apples. Or maybe it's, I really don't like Granny Smith apples because they are far too crunchy. And we're perhaps adding in even more to this. So we want to say they're far too crunchy, but I ate one yesterday for the first time in years, and actually, I quite liked it. So in this example, perhaps you've recently been learning these sorts of, I really like, I really don't like, I quite liked. You've been learning that sort of thing. We've got some expressions that can be taken further there. I quite liked it, full stop, right? Then at an advanced level, like I say, with all of these, you may be doing something completely different at each level, but we're going to use the same example so we can see very clearly these different options for expansion. I'm going to move up a bit because we might get more lines. So I really like pizza with pineapple because it's so tasty that I almost die. However, and obviously these are all quite short examples because I don't want to take up all your day typing, watching this for you. However, and almost die. However, I know this is controversial. It's so controversial that there are, I don't know if this is true, but it probably is, Facebook groups and petitions trying to ban it. I think this is because, therefore, and so, right? So I'm just giving you the structure of extra ways you might want to take this. Even at an intermediate level, you probably will be able to do a sentence like this. I think this is because, therefore, and so, conclusion, right? So like a whole extra piece of information in one sentence with those sort of core attachment words in the middle. I really don't like Granny Smith apples because they're far too crunchy, but I ate one yesterday for the first time in years, and actually, I quite liked it. There is something to be said about sour foods. For example, when I was in Thailand, tom yum soup was everywhere. I think people like it because, here we go, therefore, dun dun dun, and so, dun dun dun, right? So you can see that just with one prompt, the same prompts, we've layered in these different bits of vocabulary for different levels. We've gone from a very beginner response to intermediate to advanced. And even as a beginner as well, like I say, this is just a quick example to show you very briefly what this might look like. But I don't want you to think that as a beginner, it means less, because you could have that same structure and you could be filling in the blanks for the words that you know. So maybe you've done a lot of food words to practice. And so you can also add in something like, I like cheeseburgers because they are delicious. I like, what else is a food? Sandwiches, but I don't like that one, right? So still keeping within the realm of like a simple structure, and we're not really varying it too much, but we're doing more of that simple structure. Whereas at an intermediate level, we're expanding on something like that. We're going further. We're using things like because as well as but. We're like doing a couple in the same sentence rather than just one. And then at an advanced level, we've got things that are going even beyond that. And, we can be bringing in all sorts of more deeper opinions and thoughts on all of that stuff. It's very, very easy, I would say, to take one simple prompt and use it at different levels. This is just one example of how you can do that. And of course, this is a written example, but in the Speak 28 by 28 challenge, we're talking about speaking. You've got speaking prompts that you'll be doing for your daily prompts and your daily practice. And if you want to write that, you can write it. If you want bullet points, that can be good, depending on what level you're at. If you want to just hit record and go, if you want to just speak it out loud and that be it, that's also fine. It's very much up to you how you choose to respond to those prompts. But the whole goal is that you are responding, that you are having that daily practice and you're building a speaking habit. There we go. That is it. It is so simple, right? To adjust, to just change things ever so slightly for the level that you're at. So, so easy. And you can do this every day within the challenge. You can use the challenge as well for different languages. If you're at different levels in different languages, you maybe want to do one day for one language, another day for another. Maybe you go through the whole thing for one language first and then do it for another one. Or maybe you do a couple of languages each day. Depends on how much time you have, how you want to take things in. Completely up to you how you use this. But I just wanted to show you what this looks like and how this works for any level, because I know that can feel like, whoa, any level? Really? Wow. So there we go. If you're ready to get started, you can join the Speak 28 by 28 challenge right now at lindsaydoeslanguages.com/speak. And I'm so excited. Subscribe here so you don't miss the next video in this mini series. And I'll be back again tomorrow. All right.